Welcome back to the Impact Storytelling Podcast. I'm your host, Sabine Imperbst, and today I'm joined by Airheart, camera assistant, drone pilot, and animal behaviorist. A Danish-Norwegian second camera and drone operator with a background in animal behavior and international fieldwork. She has a Bachelor of Science in Animal Behavior and Welfare, during which she has gained experience in scientific fieldwork in projects such as whale shark research in the Maldives and bottlenose dolphin research in Brazil. These experiences strengthened her love for science communication and visual media and brought her to Bristol to do a master's in wildlife filmmaking. Since the completion of her master's degree, she has gained experience working on different natural history programs and has worked on shoots as a second camera on multiple locations around the world. Currently, she's working as a camera assistant and drone operator on BBC's Countryfile series. Welcome to the podcast. I'm happy to have you here to discuss your experience in animal behavior and natural history filmmaking. To start, how did you first get into this field?
Thanks for having me, Sabine. I'm really excited to be here and have a chat with you today. Well, I always wanted to work with animals. And I thought when I was a kid, I was like, well, then I had to be a veterinarian, right? I think a lot of people have this thought that if you want to do something with animals, you have to be a vet. And I then did some work in like the summertime. I would go and work at the local veterinary office, kind of like help out. And I realized that that wasn't really right for me because the vets would do more work with animals, like, operating and things like this. But I was really interested in the animal behavior side of things. And the people who actually worked more with the animals when the animals were like awake and behaving or behaving badly were the veterinary nurses. So I was like, well, then I guess I have to become a veterinary nurse. I then did, I started doing it's not a degree in Denmark, but it's more like a 4-year like school, I guess you call it. And part of that education is you do a lot of interning. So you need to you apply for the school, but you need to secure an interning spot at a clinic, like a veterinary clinic, where you can come and do your practicals for those 4 years. So I did that, and I was like, oh, I'm going to just apply for loads of them. And I managed somehow to get a spot in this, like the main clinic in Copenhagen, like the biggest, I think it's probably one of the biggest in the country. Really hard to get into, like they only take like 3 people a year. It's like the top of the top, basically, if you get a spot there. Like, this is not to like toot my own horn. There's a reason why I'm saying this. We'll come back to this, which is important. But it's like really, really hard to get in. And I got a spot, and I was like, right, I'm just going to like start doing that. And you start with the practical stuff. So you start with the internship. And I actually, a few months in, realized that it wasn't quite right for me. I really thought it was, but I just could feel it wasn't. Yeah, it just wasn't quite right. The stuff and the work they were doing just wasn't quite what I wanted to be doing. And I think that was sort of a moment where, coming back to, it was really hard to get a spot anywhere anyways for an internship. And then I got one in a really difficult place that was really hard to get in. And then realizing I didn't want to do it anymore was like, well, then what do I do now? And I think I thought it through, but actually at the end, I went to the director of the clinic and I spoke to her and I was like, listen, I don't think this is right for me. I obviously appreciate you guys taking me in, and I hope that there's still time that you can take, a new person in my place. But this is not for me. I'm going to have to like stop it. And she was just like, no one has ever done this. Like, no one has ever like got a spot and then quit. But I think listening to your gut feeling and calling things off, even if it's taken a lot of work to get there, was such an important step for me, because I've then done that other times as well when I realized something wasn't quite right. I think that's really important to be able to do. So that's why I was like, it's really hard to get that spot. And that made it harder to then let it go. but I think that was necessary for sure. But yeah, I then found out that you can actually study animal behavior as a degree in the UK, because that's not a degree in like Denmark or Norway where I'm from. Like in Scandinavia, you can study biology, you can study, I think, zoology some places. And then in Denmark, we have this degree, university degree, which is basically like livestock science. So it's about how you make the most out of a cow, kind of. I mean, that's, very, very short. But yeah, that's not my angle on it. I didn't want to go into farming. I didn't want to spend 4 years studying that and then building on behavior. So university was never as such like in the cards for me. But then I learned you can study animal behavior in the UK, and I was like, right, that's a degree I would do. Like that would work for me. So I applied to a few different like places in the UK. I did my first year in Scotland, because at the time the Scottish government would pay European students, well, not pay us to come, but they would pay our tuition fee basically, because they wanted more European students studying in Scotland, I guess. So I did my first year in Aberdeen, which was great. I loved the place, loved the people, but it was the first year that they did the course officially, animal behavior. And because of that, we were sort of guinea pigs. And the course just wasn't fully formed. Like we would have biology, which obviously makes sense, but then we'd have psychology with all the psychology students, like about people. And psychology is really interesting, but it's not animal behavior. Like you can't really apply it. So even though I loved it there, I actually, again, had to make the decision of like, right, I'm really happy to be here, but it's not quite right. How do I reassess? Like, how do I make this align more with what I want to do and make it feel more right? So I actually managed to transfer universities. So I got into Plymouth University, and they let me start on the second year, so I didn't have to restart. Like they were like, the first year in Aberdeen counts for your first year here, that's fine. Did my second year, did a placement year, which was like amazing. And then I did my final year, and through doing this degree, I sort of felt like build up enough experience and like credit, I guess, or I don't know what you would say, but enough of I could tick the boxes of what requirements were to apply for this master's in Bristol, which is the UE Masters in Wildlife Filmmaking. UE is the University of the West of England, but that's a really long name, so no one really calls it that. Everyone just kind of calls it UE. But yeah, they had this Masters in Wildlife Filmmaking, which I thought sounded amazing. There's another one in, I think, Salford. Laura Pennifor did that one, who you spoke to, was a good friend. And other than that, there's not really a lot of specific courses in that sense that do this.
Yeah, at least not in the UK.
No, exactly, no. And
there is, I think, one in New Zealand and one in the US as well.
Yeah, I think I looked into the one in New Zealand. When I was first looking around, I was like, well, there's the UK one, there's the Bristol one, which is really hard to get into, because they're all hard to get into, right? And then there's the Salford one, which is also hard to get into. And then there's like a New Zealand one. But I'm like, I would love to go to New Zealand, but I just felt that wasn't quite right. But yeah, then I applied for the Masters and I got in, which was crazy. Yeah, it was, I did not expect, because I think it's quite common to apply more than once. Like, if you don't get in the first year, you apply another year. But yeah, I got in. And then through doing that master's, so, came to Bristol, lived here, and then I've stayed in Bristol. So I finished that in 2021, and then I've stayed here to work in industry since. Yeah.
Amazing. And you said you did a placement year. Can you tell us more about your university experience and what you gained from that placement year before you started to study film?
Mm-hmm. I loved the idea of a placement year. I was like, this is the best thing. The fact that we can actually go and travel and do relevant work while we're at university. Because otherwise you would probably have to finish university and then somehow take a year working for free, but you're not really, there's no system to come back to, there's no structure. So I was like, of course I'll do a placement year. And to do a placement year, you have to, at least like when I did it and the way it was set up, is that you yourself have to plan all of it. So the university will still like support you and you'll be insured through them. And, you know, if you live up to the risk assessments and you do all of these planning things, but essentially you have to set up at least 6 months of relevant work experience through like a year. And I managed to do through like friends and contacts of friends and, you know, trying to figure out who knows who in sort of the science business. I got hold of some really great people in the Maldives who work with whale shark research. And it's an NGO that's called, the longest name ever, the Maldives Whale Shark Research Project. And they did say they were probably a bit like, I don't know, burned from the sun that day or something when they actually decided on that name. But it's an amazing organization, and they collect data on whale sharks in the Maldives, especially around the South Ari atolls. So I went there for 4 months and did like what we do basically is it was me and the 2 other researchers, like scientific researchers. And then we'd have a few volunteers for a few weeks at a time to come help us collect data. And we'd be on a boat all day surveying the reef. And whenever we saw whale sharks, we would go in the water. So we'd be free diving because scuba would take way too long with like the oxygen and all the equipment. So I trained as a free diver before going out and doing that, because they were like, you need to have this level of, you know, this is safety, and you're teaching others and blah, blah, blah. So I did the free diving course and then went out to the Maldives and then basically free dive every day, studying whale sharks. Yeah, so that was really great to be part of. And they would then share, so all the information we would collect, all the data we collected, it was like environmental data, so the water and air temperature and the visibility and the weather and all these things. And it would be the sort of site where we were when we saw whale sharks and the whale shark behavior, and then boat behavior, like were the boats in the areas, were the tourists, were the people in the water, what was, you know, the situation, like how was the shark behaving and the people. And we would take ID photos of the sharks because we could ID them for their spots. So the same way that a zebra or a zebra, I don't know how you're supposed to say it, but have the individual, all the like the stripes are like kind of like a fingerprint, right? This and the cheetah is the same with their spots. So the whale shark also has loads of spots on like the whole back, and you can use that to identify the individuals. So we would then take photo IDs like through the pictures we had, and we'd also sometimes measure the sharks, which sounds a bit crazy, but we would do this. We'd usually do this when there were no other tourists around, because obviously we are there as an NGO, and we work really hard to set the best example for tourists and other like people who take people out and like tour guides and stuff. And we do a lot of outreach work with like local guides and communities and stuff like this, for behaving with marine wildlife in the water and so on. But yeah, with the measuring of the whale shark, we would do it when there were no other people around, because we wouldn't want it to look like, so we know the whale shark behavior really well. So we always keep eyes on the shark. And if the shark is bothered by us, we obviously leave it. But a lot of people, when you come as a tourist, like if I go to another country as a tourist and see an animal I'm not used to seeing and working with, I don't know the behavior very well. And I don't know what signs to look for to see if the animal's, you know, pissed off or not. So we would do it when there were no one else around, and we would basically have this long like tape measure, and one person would hold one end and the other would hold the other end, and we'd dive down and swim alongside the shark and measure it out from the tip of the nose to the tail. And then we would try and do it 3 times to get like an accurate sort of average. But yeah, still again keeping a safe distance and stuff. There's so much that goes into research, because when you do research for science, like it has to be by the book, because otherwise it's not ethical, and also people can't replicate it, so other people can't see if what you've done actually is real. So that was the Maldives, which was absolutely amazing. So a lot of other marine wildlife, like we would also do pictures of if we saw like turtles or manta rays, because there are other organizations working with these animals that we can then give the data to. And then all the data we would collect would go into this international database that scientists all over the world can get access to for free. And other organizations also from like, especially like the Mexico and other sort of areas where whale sharks are, where they collect data, all of that international data would go into this site. And that could then be used by people or scientists all over the world, which I really like, that there wasn't just our data for us, but it was shared. So that was really, really cool.
While in the Maldives, you witnessed the impact of mass tourism on whale shark. And has there been any research on how boat traffic affects their health, given that they tend to linger near the surface for extended periods? Have their behaviors changed due to the presence of so many boats, as you have seen both them with many boats and just your research boat?
Yeah, I think I've definitely been sort of on the field side of things and seen this impact like firsthand. And what we could see was that, I mean, it's been a few years since I've been back, so I would hope it's better now, but I don't know. It is so tricky, because we all want to, well, I say we all want to go and see this, like you and I, like a lot of people want to go and have these experiences, but so you can't really, it's not fair to gatekeep and be like, well, you can't go because then there's too many. But I think what we saw was, like you've seen yourself, there are guidelines about how to behave around the whale sharks. So like how many boats should be around, how many people should be in the water, how close can you go, stuff like this. But these guidelines are not really enforced. Like, there's no consequences. So even though you do have a lot of really good local guides who, tell the visitors the rules and they try and, keep on top of it, you can have a lot of people in the water and it's hard to keep track. The most I've ever seen was one whale shark chilling in the surface. And I think we had over 200 people in the water. And I think we had around 60 boats. Like, that's insane. Like, just imagine like 60 boats in one place of different sizes and stuff, and then just like all these, like 200 people in the water. It was insane. And these boats would like come in and basically just sail in sort of to the middle of where everyone on the people were and like drop 10 or 20 more tourists. And first of all, it's incredibly dangerous for everyone in the water, right? Because like these boats have propellers, which is just insane. And then a lot of people would go in the water with life vests because they weren't good swimmers. But that also makes it really hard to then swim. You can't really get around, like, so you would just have a lot of people in like vests, like splash around the surface, not going anywhere, like boats in and out. And yeah, it was just horrible. Like, it's so bad. And so what we could see on the whale shark behavior side was that actually when we had 200 people in the water and 60 boats, we didn't go in the water. We're like, we're just going to document this, but we're not going to add, to why would we go in the water? This makes no sense. But what we can see on other occasions as well, where we had, even if there weren't that many people in the water around the whale shark behavior, changes so much. It's really affected by it. So essentially, the whale shark, a little bit of behavior, we'll squeeze this in, a little bit of whale shark behavior. So they are filter feeders. They like plankton and stuff in the water, and they feed at depth. So around these atolls, the Maldives, you have these amazing reefs, and then you have the steep drop off. So it's a few kilometers down, which means you have a lot of really cold water in these currents that go around these islands, which brings a lot of nutrients, which makes it so like abundant with life. And the whale sharks feed off all of this in the deep, but they cool down quite a lot, and they don't, like, they're not mammals, they can't heat themselves. So they need to come back closer to the surface to like heat their body up again. So they come back to the surface and they just want to chill for a bit. It's like if you've been really cold and tired and like you wake up and you just kind of want to like make a cup of tea and like, put on a sweater and like get your body going. So they are really tired. They just want to chill on the surface. Well, I don't know, 5 meters below the surface, something like this, where the water's nice and warm. And they can't move that fast because they are cold and slow. So when you then have a lot of people coming to like see them and swim next to them, and some people try and like touch them, and it's horrible. They want to go away, but they don't have the energy to. So we would see whale sharks do these like attempts to dive back down. So if a whale shark had enough heat in its body and energy, it would just sort of like start to like slowly just go deeper and deeper. And then it's like, fine, it doesn't want us around. We'll just leave it. But sometimes they can't, they don't have the energy to do this. So they would go like down maybe like 5 meters, and then come back up and dive like a bit like 5 meters down and come back up. So if you don't know if you don't know whale shark behavior, if you don't know what it means, you're like, oh, it's just swimming around, like it's just going up and down, but it's coming back up to the surface where we are, so it probably doesn't mind. It does mind, it just can't physically get away, which is so heartbreaking, just seeing this animal trying to escape. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds not so nice. I mean, I haven't seen that many tourists around, but we were looking for whale sharks, and there were a lot of tourism boats everywhere, and they were just all going up and down in the same direction, like going really fast. But I've talked with one of the guides there, and he told me that a lot of the hotels already talk with each other, so they don't go all at the same time. But if there wasn't a whale sighting in a long time, they still want to give their tourists a chance to see them. So then it might happen that there are a lot of boats going out at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And it is wildlife tourism. It is a business, and they want people to be happy and to tell their friends about it and send more people, and or give tips or just have a good time, which I understand. Especially like you say, around some seasons where you just don't have, maybe you haven't had a sighting in a few weeks, or like it is really tricky. And although there are guidelines to say, oh, you can be, let's say, 3 boats and 15 people in the water, that's not always like realistic or feasible if everyone wants to, have a good session. But like I think, like you say, that communication between the hotels and the resorts and the rangers, and in general, just the sort of educating the local rangers, the local guide, well, not rangers, but the wildlife specialists and local guides and divers, because essentially you don't want lots of people from the outside coming and telling them how to do things like that. Just no one really likes that, do you? But like, I wouldn't like that if it was only people from another country coming to my country about something, working with something that's unique to where I live, and then telling me what to do, what not to do, but not actually investing in the local community. So I enjoyed that work. We did a lot with the Maldives Whale Shark Research Project. Just a long name, yeah. And we did a lot of work with the locals. We did a lot of work with local communities. We would do a lot of work with not only dive instructors and tour guides and stuff, but we'd also do a lot of work with the women and children, because in the Maldives, traditionally and culturally, like the men would go out and fish, and they would be in the ocean, and they'd come back home, but the women wouldn't go to sea, and they wouldn't go in the sea. Like for them, I spoke to some of them, and they're like, yeah, no, the sea is like, I'll walk on the beach, but like I don't want to get in the water. Like I don't want to deal with that. Like that's dangerous. That's not my, like, I'm not going to get in that. And the kids then also grow up with this. So a lot of people in the Maldives don't know how to swim, which seems at first, like when you kind of first glance, you're like, that's insane, but culturally it makes sense. So we would do a lot of work with women and children where we'd take them out. We'd do like sessions at schools and like teach the kids about marine wildlife and pollution and the ocean. And we'd take them out swimming. We'd take women out swimming, like mothers or women from the community. And it was just such an amazing experience to see how their minds kind of switched onto it. Because one thing is seeing the ocean from land, like it's just this blanket of water, right? But the moment you get like goggles on and you're just floating, like snorkeling, and you look down into the ocean, like especially in the Maldives where you have like reefs and you've got fish and all these things, it's just such a different world. And I think a lot of them just never had access to it or never thought to try that, because it just wasn't what people, it just wasn't culturally what you did. Like, it's just not as common, especially in the smaller local islands. So we lived on a local island, Digara. I know some other organizations like either stay at resorts or, bigger islands, but we lived at this tiny little island. So it was us and then a few hundred locals, not that many people. The island is like a few kilometers long, like I think 3 kilometers long, but it's only 200 meters wide. So it's like a little slim island. But it was really cool to be sort of living in that instead of living in a resort, because you got a lot more of a connection and understanding of the local community, which is really useful when you work with them. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like an amazing project. I hope you're still doing it and doing a great job, it sounds. And then after that, you went to Brazil to study dolphins.
So yeah, after the Maldives, I went to Brazil, where I worked with these amazing scientists that are studying bottlenose dolphin behavior. So it's this local population. It's in Santa Catarina, which is a state in the south of Brazil. And on the coast there's a small town called Laguna, where there is a big sort of estuary from land meeting the sea. And right where the sort of end of the river meets the sea, there are local fishermen who fish with like cast nets. So you like throw these nets out and pull them back in. And they have this relationship with this population of bottlenose dolphins. Some of the dolphins, not all, do this behavior where they will actually chase fish towards the fishermen, so that when the fishermen throw the nets, they actually catch more fish. And the theory is that when the fishermen cast the nets and that kind of like hits the shoal of fish and the fish scatter, the fish that are not in the net are then sort of without their friends and they're a bit disoriented. And that makes it a lot easier for the dolphins to like eat them, like pick them up, basically, to catch them. That's a theory, because the water in that river is so murky, you can't see, just because of all the sand and the silt. Like, it's not dirty, it's just very like murky. So we can't actually see what happens. But that's what that's what we think. That's the theory why the dolphins are doing this. They're not just doing it to be nice to the fishermen. There's the dolphins get something out of it as well. So I was in Brazil for 3 months and helped them with the field work, again, collecting data on everything from like the dolphin behavior and the fishermen and how many fish they caught and the weather and the tides, like all of these things all sort of tied into each other. And then the group of scientists who were working on this, sort of their lab, so they're like their group at the university, would then do different studies with this data. So I also ended up doing my animal behavior dissertation for that bachelor was on some of the behavior that we'd seen out there, which was mother calf behavior, because what we still are not completely sure of is that you would have, out of this population of dolphins, there's like 50 or 60 of them, I believe. I might remember that wrong, but I think that's the number. Not all of them would do this behavior. So the fishermen who had been doing this for years, they can recognize the dolphins by their dorsal fins and like their behavior. So they know these dolphins really well. They give them like nicknames, and the dolphins that help them fish, they call like good dolphins. And then they have specific names for each of them. And then the other ones, they're kind of like bad dolphins, but they just don't really help out. But then they're not really sure how the calves learn, because we can't see in the water if like the calves like swim with the mother when the mother does it, or if they're like just observe. And I wanted to look into whether or not, if a calf has a mother that does not do this behavior, does the calf do it? Like, can the calf learn from observing the other dolphins but not from its mum? Or is it only the calves, like, is it only like from mother to calf the behavior is like passed down? And it does look like it. I mean, what we looked at with the data, it does look like that they do learn from between each other, not just from the mother. But yeah, it was just really, really interesting to get into that sort of science when there's so much we still like don't know, don't understand, and it's just a little pocket of Brazil, this little one location where these dolphins and fishermen work together. It's wild. It's a crazy place, but it was so cool to be part of.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting that the dolphins help the fishermen there and that they work together.
I know. It sounds like a Disney film, doesn't it? But
yeah. So you've had incredible opportunities to research animal behavior across different countries. What inspired you to shift your focus toward natural history filmmaking?
I always really loved watching nature shows. But I never had the thought of like, I'll be doing that. Like that never sort of clicked in my brain. But I remember like watching these BBC shows or Animal Planet and Discovery and things like this and be like, wow, like imagine if your name was like on the credit list. Like how crazy would that be? That'd be really, really cool. But I just never saw myself in any of the roles, I think. And like growing up like in Denmark, I'm like, no, like no big shows being made here about nature. So where would I even start? Like it's all international stuff, right? Um, but yeah, I had actually heard about the UE master, the wildlife filmmaking master. I think I'd found it like when I was back in school, like right when they started the course, and kind of once in a while, like every few years, I would like Google it again to see if it was still a thing because it sounded really cool. But I never really had, in my mind, I didn't have the qualifications or the requirements. They were like, oh, it's good if you have a zoology degree or if you've already like done film or if you've done these things. And I'm like, I can't tick any of the boxes. So I'm no, why would I apply? Because I'm not, I wouldn't get in. I wouldn't be considered. When when I did a lot of work with animals before university, I, like I mentioned before, thought I was going to be a vet. Then I studied as a veterinary nurse, and in between this, I also did work with animals, sort of in captive settings and in parks. When I was 16, I managed to sort of convince um, this Danish aquarium and research center to let me work with them for like a month in the summer holiday because they have harbor porpoises and harbor seals, and they also have other like Danish marine wildlife like fish and crabs. But I really wanted to go and work with them because it's not like a SeaWorld aquarium. It's a very small place, and what they have is they have a few seals, and then they have a few harbor porpoises that actually came to them years ago because went they got stuck in fishing nets, and they weren't like healthy enough to be released, so they took them in and then they kept them there. And the enclosure that they're in is actually, the aquarium kind of sits on the ocean, and the enclosure isn't like a pool. It's literally just netting around like an open space of like ocean. So it's quite a natural environment. Like there's like fish and crabs and whatever coming in and out, but the harbor porpoises and seals can't like swim out. And what they do there is they do a lot of research on the behavior and the senses of both the seals, but especially the harbor porpoises, because we have a lot of these. And like this is like one of the smallest whales in the world. It's tiny, looks like a tiny, really fat dolphin. Can you say that? I don't know. Like it's really short, like like a tiny, maybe like a tiny orca, but they just like eat fish. They're not very vicious. They're very cute and they're very shy. And we don't know a lot about them because they are hard to see and hard to study. But we have a lot of them, especially in the sea around Denmark. And they unfortunately quite often go in fishing nets, or they get sort of really affected by boat traffic. So I really want to go and work with them and help the work they do, which is studying them. So because this is an aquarium and these animals are captive, you want to, you know, you hope that you can make the setting for them as good as possible. But part of that, especially when you have like marine mammals, they are so clever and they need a lot of stimulation. So what we can do is we can do training with them, and they would do this training that would then help scientists and researchers who come from all over the world and work with these trainers and these animals to collect data. And they've collected loads of data about especially the senses of the porpoises, so how they hear and what they see, and kind of how they interact with the environment, which has been used to then help regulate boat traffic and rules about nets, and whether or not we should have little warning sounds on nets that will then tell, well, I mean dolphins as well, but porpoises to not go into the net and things like this. So all of the work they do has really helped like protect the wild populations, which I thought was really cool. So I worked with them for a month, did a lot of communication stuff with the visitors, because you can come and visit the aquarium, and I did work with the trainers and the animals, and I spent a lot of time cutting up fish to feed to the seals and the porpoises. You would just constantly smell like fish after working there, and you was always have like fish scales just kind of like stuck on your clothes, just like for a month. That was just my life. But it was amazing, and I loved that. And then after school, in between some of the other things we talked about, I went to Norway, up to the Arctic, where I worked mainly with wolves. It was just a big animal park they've got wolves, but they've got bears, moose, reindeer, Arctic foxes, lynx. They only have sort of animal species that are native to sort of the Arctic or northern Scandinavia. So not like tigers and elephants, but animals that would naturally be there. And again, I really like this park because it wasn't like a zoo. It's basically a side of a mountain, and they have put these fences up, but they're really big enclosures. I think it's the park with the most like square meter space per animal, like in the enclosure. So they're really, really big, but not big enough that the animals can fend for themselves. Like we have to feed them. But still, it's such a good, I thought it was such a nice balance of its captivity, but it's as close to the wildlife as possible. And when I did that, I really, really wanted to share what I got to do, because I felt so lucky to do the work and to go and see these things and to work with these animals. And I was like, well, if I couldn't go and do it, then I would want to see someone else do it. And I would want to see what they were up to. So I would do a lot of photography and little videos, and I had like a photo blog, and I would write about the work we did. And I think that was when it sort of started for me, this interest in the media side of things with nature. I still had not at all connected the dots about making wildlife TV, but we slowly got there. So yeah, that started with the wolves, and then later again when I did my placement year, I felt so privileged and lucky to go and do the work I did. So I again did lots of like, I guess, science communication, like social media and like little videos. And for the dolphins, we had some sort of scientific collaboration with Nat Geo, and Nat Geo would do these like in the field research logbooks with different scientists all over the world. So we'd fill in that and like pictures and text about what we were doing. So all of this was, I guess, essentially science communication, but with the visual media was what I really loved. And through then doing my degree of my Bachelor Animal Behavior degree, I realized then, I was like, right, I want to do something with animal behavior, something in the field. If I can do it with a camera, that's what we need to do. That's where I need to go. So I then finally sort of realized, okay, I think I have enough, I guess, portfolio and experience and like a degree to apply for the Wildlife Filmmaking Masters. I could have probably applied way before. Like people come to the Masters with so many different backgrounds, so many different skills. And I think I just didn't believe in myself enough to like what I thought they wanted. I kind of had this idea in my head. And I think, yeah, that also goes for, I mean, jobs and a lot of other things in life in general. You kind of get something in your head of what you think people want or expect, and you get carried away, and then you feel like you can't live up to it. Yeah, but you just got to take a chance.
Yeah, that's true. I think more than a no you can't really get, and the best case you get a yes. So definitely
exactly
should try it everywhere.
Exactly. Like my mom has always told me this. She's like, the worst you can get is a no, which is literally just two letters. Like it's not, and yeah. Yeah.
And you've traveled the world for various shoots now, and from the outside, many people see wildlife filmmaking as a glamorous safari travel, but reality can be quite different. Can you share what it is really like working in the field?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously such a privilege to get to go on location and do these shoots and see amazing parts of the world and meet really cool people who like work with the wildlife or the location. Um, but it's definitely like it's hard, it is work, and I think it's easy to get caught up in the mentality of being like, oh well, I'm just really happy and grateful that I get to do this, so I can't complain about any of it. But you kind of have to realize it is really hard at the same time, and especially a lot of the shoots I've done have been quite extreme shoots. So they were like remote expedition shoots, which is like, I don't know, you drive like 3 days into a desert to like stay there for several weeks, or you spend days in like canoes going up river to get into the jungle where there's no one there. Like you kind of build a camp and you live in that camp for a certain amount of time. And it's really hard. There's a lot of things to consider. We had like I think the hardest one I've done, I would say, was the jungle shoot. And yeah, as you'll see from the pictures, it I can still feel like it's amazing. Like I love being there, but it was also really, really hard. Like it was just such a hard it's a hard environment to be in. I think the jungle is not my natural like element for sure. For sure it's not. Um but yeah, it's just in the jungle you are always hot, it's always humid, you're always uncomfortable, you're always sweating. I have never smelled so bad myself ever in my life, and I have never smelled other humans smell so bad like we did in the jungle. It was so bad. And you kind of feel like, oh, after a few days, maybe your body, adjusts. And then suddenly you're like, oh, I'm not sweating right now. Like you're just sitting talking to someone, and you're like, oh, like I think my body has now adjusted. And then a few minutes after, when you're just sitting down, maybe talking to someone, suddenly just like starts pouring out again off your body. And you're like, right, okay, my body's never going to get used to this. Like it just isn't. When you're in the jungle, it's actually nicer to not be on the ground, like when you sleep. Because if you're in a tent, there's a lot of stuff that can get in that tent. Like yeah, I wouldn't want to be in a tent on the ground in the jungle. There's too many things that crawl around there. So we actually lived in hammocks, and the picture we got there is my camp. Well, not my camp, but my hammock. Yeah. So you have this quite big hammock, and then the little black bit is like mosquito net. So you sip and you open it and close it when you go in and out of your hammock, and keep that like free of bugs. And then you have a tarp on top of it because it rains a lot and you just want to make sure it's dry. And then underneath it you have another tarp where you can like have your bag, maybe like a chair. And basically your room, your house is the inside of that hammock. So you would have little dry bags, and you would have, I think there's a picture somewhere, we can like find that later. So you would have little dry bags, a little fan, like your head torch, and yeah, you just have all the essentials inside your hammock. So you don't need to go out when you want to get it. And you always want to close the zipper on your hammock because you just don't know what would go into it. So you can see in my hammock, you would have like, there's my head torch, there's a little fan, there's a little net. I think I had probably some like basic medicines with me, just like in my hammock in case I wanted it, because you don't want to have to wake up in the night and go out and find stuff in the night. I would have my water. I had my little like cleaning bag, like my end of the day, start of the day bag. So I would have like wet wipes for my face, my body. I would have some like probably some sunscreen. I think I would have some disinfectant as well. And I would have some, like every night every night in the jungle, you want to clean your feet because it's so humid, and you can't help but even if you're not walking in water, your feet are just going to be moist. nice and wet, and your sock's going to be wet, and your boot, like, it's just going to sit in your boot, and it's really bad. It's really disgusting. And essentially, if you don't take care of your feet, even if you do, there's a really good chance you'll get foot rot. And foot rot is basically because your foot is just humid, all like, it's like if you're sitting in the bathtub and you get like wrinkly fingers, but it's just like 24/7. So your skin starts to like basically disintegrate and peel off. It's disgusting. It's really bad. But you want to like take care of your feet as much as you can. So I would always like at the end of the day take my shoes off, sit in my hammock, and like have my feet dangling out, and then I would like use like a wet wipe to like clean them, and like try and like flick them so they would dry a little bit, and then you would like put this I guess it's the same as like baby powder, like talcum powder, or you can get this for your feet. So yeah, you would just try and like make them dry, and then I can't remember. I think I had like a fresh pair of socks. Some of the nights, if I had dry socks, like thin cotton ones, I would sleep in those to like keep the dry powder in. And other times I just wouldn't bother, and then I'd have powder in my hammock, but it was fine. So there's like a lot of things to consider, and everything in the jungle is potentially dangerous. And I also sent you like a whole list of pictures of like insects we can like trawl through. But essentially, you want to check everything before you touch it in the jungle. Like before you lift up your water bottle, before you open your bag, before you get your hammock, before you, I don't know, lift up a plate to get dinner, like everything, you want to just give it a little push first, or like push it with your boot, or like just like make it move a little bit, because there's probably something on it. There's probably an insect or spider, like something potentially dangerous on whatever it is you want to pick up. Even when you're walking in the jungle and you're walking on the trail, we would like make a trail if we were going somewhere, we're just walking without a trail, following each other. If you like put your hand on like a branch or like some leaves, you just don't know what could be on them. So you always need to just check. So this like mentality of always checking is like, it becomes second nature, but it's still, I think, like hard. And what we were quite unlucky with our shoot, because for some reason, when we went there, one of the locations, I think the trees were like blooming. So there were flowers. So there were loads of bees. And these bees were thankfully not aggressive. Like they looked like wasps almost, but they were not wasps. They were just like bees. So they weren't mad at us. They just were there for the flowers. But then because we were sweating, and like it was like always like you're just covered in sweat, they would land on us to like eat the salt of our skin. It's great. And like it didn't really, like they just kind of chill on you and lick the salt of your skin. But obviously we're working, so we're moving around. So if you accidentally squeeze one, then it's gonna sting you. And I did it so many times. I tried to be careful, but I think I got stung like 7 times in a few days. And we had those big ones, which are just like standard bees. And then we had these tiny, tiny ones, which are called sweat bees. And they are like basically the same, but they are tiny, and you don't really feel them as much. And if you squeeze them, doesn't hurt that much. But yeah, we just had, like at any one time, you would have probably 10 bees flying around you, just waiting to land on you. And it's not like it was weird, because they obviously weren't there to like come, like they weren't attacking you, but they were just the relentless sound of like the buzzing. Like it was just really stressful, constantly just buzzing around. And I think we all reach a point of one, I guess we all just reach a point at different stages. We like reached our limit, and we just kind of like, oh, had to like walk off for a bit. And even if you washed off in the river, like half an hour later, like they'd be back. We tried to build like a smoke fire, like smoke them out. They didn't really care. It was intense. That was really hard. And then to top it off, this jungle shoot. I mean, it sounds like a horrible time. I had a great time, but also the jungle like chewed me up, spat me out. So I I thought I had a great plan. I was like, right, I'm going to wash my hair the day before we go into the jungle, like the morning. Then I'm going to brush it, and then I'm going to make it into like a French braid. And in that way, it's like safe. Like it's not going to get tangled. Yeah, I thought it would be safe. That was my braid when we went into the jungle. Yeah, then that was when I think that's the day we sailed. We were on the river the whole day, and I think it looks already kind of messed up because it was so humid. I don't really know why. I don't know why. Anyways, I had made a French braid. I was like, that's gonna last me a few days, and then I can make another one. After like I think a day and a half, maybe even after one day, 24 hours, I was like, I think that's a few days in. But like after after one day, I was like, I'm gonna take the braid out. It was 2 days. I don't remember. It's all a blur. I tried to take it out and I couldn't get it out. I was like, it somehow has knotted itself at the back. I'm not really sure. I can't see. And bear in mind, this jungle expedition, remote extreme expedition, it was me and it was like 40 men, which they were all lovely, but like, so I mean, 40 men, it sounds like quite a lot, but there was like some of them were cameramen from our team, some of them were like presenters, and then some of them were like local rangers or boatmen, so people like coming and going, but there was just me and a lot of men, and I was like, I don't know what's happening with my hair, but I also wanted to just do a good job, so I was like, you know what? Ain't nobody got time for that. I'm just gonna leave whatever this is for a few days, and then I knew after a few days we were gonna leave the jungle for like a day and then go back to another location. And like basically I never got the braid out. So that picture is like after 2 weeks in the jungle with like a French braid that just was never a French braid. One of the guys was like, he was like, yeah, in the first few days, none of them asked about it in the first few days as it got worse and worse. And one of them was like, yeah, I just kind of wasn't sure if it was like a new hairstyle you were trying out. Like, I don't really sure what you were doing. And then they all kind of like, I started talking about it. They were like, right, okay, this is not planned. This is an issue. Okay. And they were very lovely. They're like, can we help? Like, we tried to like this really lovely, one of our like local rangers made out of wood. He made me like basically a tool, kind of like a knitting stick. Like I needed something. I didn't have like I had a hairbrush, but not anything to like. I need like a needle to like get it out. So he made me like a needle, and I tried to get it out. And this other guy spent like an hour trying to get it out. We just could not get it out. And then that was So that was what it looked like after 2 weeks in the jungle. It was basically like one dreadlock, but it was a dread ball, and it was so thick that like it felt like, I don't know, like a piece of felt. Like it was like you could probably put a needle through it, but there was no like you could not put your fingers through it. And it was to the back of my scalp. And to be fair, the last few days in the jungle, I think I just sort of it got worse and worse and worse, right? So I just kind of switched off and I was like, you know what, I can't make it better, and there's work to do. So I'm just gonna ignore it. Like I tried every evening in my hammock to like get it better, and I was like, after like an hour, I'm like, I need to sleep. So I went to sleep, and like I don't know if it made it better or worse. I tried to put oil in it to make it like come out, like everything. And then it started the last 2 days in the jungle, it was starting to give me a headache because it was quite close to my scalp, so it was like pulling. And then we came out into one of the biggest cities, and I was like, maybe there's a hairdresser that can help me, but there wasn't anyone around. And I was like, right, I'm gonna have to like fly home with this like, I'm not gonna swear, this like effing braid, but it's not a braid, it's a dread. The dread, as we called it. It was just it got a nickname. Everyone was like, oh yeah, the dread, like that. We all knew what it was. And I flew home with it. I think I put a scarf on, like, because I was like, we're in an airport, like people are now civilized, we're out of the jungle, like I need to like cover this. And then oh, it was so bad. I wasn't sure if it could come out, but I had found out that I did some desperate Googling, searching, and I found out that when you have dreadlocks, it can be unpicked. So I was like, okay, like if you can unpick dreadlocks, maybe someone can unpick my singular dread. And I found this dreadlock specialist in Bristol, and she took me in. She was like, I can do it, but I only have 4 hours. Like, I'm fully booked around this time, but I can give you 4 hours. And I think she focused more on like getting it done versus doing it gently. And I'm very thankful to her because we got it out, right? But it's just like I was in so much pain for 4 hours because she was basically just like dragging the hair out. It was insane. And then the next day, yeah, so that's what it looked like after 4 hours of dragging it out. And I was quite scared that it would have damaged the hair, so it was so frizzy. I mean, first of all, I was really scared that it would have to be cut off because I was a bit like, if we can't get this dread out, like obviously some of my hair was not in it. Like I had this like, a ratty amount of hair that was just like hanging out of the dread. Horrible. So I was like, you know what? If we can't get it out, I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet and like shave my head and get a buzz cut, and my hair will grow out again, hopefully healthier than ever before. But thankfully, I didn't have to do that. So she unpicked it. It looked insane. Then the next day, I went to my normal hairdresser, and she was like, "Right, your scalp actually looks okay," because I was really scared that it would have like damaged the scalp. And she was like, "The hair might be okay as well. It's a bit fucked, but it's a bit messed up." I don't. Can people? I probably shouldn't swear in like podcast. Okay, it's a bit. Well, it was royally fucked up my hair officially, and she was like, "Let's see what we can do." So she put in like masks in it, and we did like some cuts and stuff, and she saved it. But well, I mean, it was the dreadlock woman, and my normal hairdresser, and it looked like this at the end, which was yeah, and it was all still there, like not the dread, but like my hair was still there, which was yeah. I felt very lucky. I was like, I can't believe this happened. I thought I was so prepared. I was like, I've got this down. The jungle can like do its worst, and the jungle did its worst, and I completely folded. No, I think I'm proud of myself for still doing my job and dealing with it. But I'm also like, yeah, Jesus Christ, I'm not. I would go back into the jungle. I would, but I would be even better prepared. You know. That was the dread. That's a whole thing. It's a whole saga. So take care of your hair when you go anywhere. That was just yeah, yeah. That was quite an experience. Yeah. So going on occasion to sum this up can be amazing, and sometimes you're really lucky and you stay at a nice hotel or like at a really cool place, and then sometimes, I mean, you're also lucky because you stay in like the desert in a tent or like the jungle in a hammock, which is really, really cool. But there just are some challenges that are constant, and you're never off. Like from the moment you go on a plane to you land back home, you're 24/7, you're on, like you're at work the whole time, even before you go and fly, because if you're lucky and it's a small shoot, you might be like a few people and like 20 bags, which is not a lot of equipment to check in. One of the shoots I did, we were 14 people and we had over 80 bags that we had to like check in on the plane. And we have like batteries and we have kit and we have just like so much stuff, and it takes a long time. Yeah, like people's own stuff, equipment, like yeah,
That's a lot of equipment, yeah. I thought I
it's a
always
lot.
carry a lot of equipment going on shoots, but it's by far nothing compared to that.
Yeah, I will say, like, when you rock up in the airport and you just keep bringing cases, the airport staff look at you like, oh no. One of those groups. But usually people are really lovely, and we obviously know that it's a pain that we come with all this stuff. So we go in really good time, and we try and make it as smooth a process as possible. But you get really good at walking with like 2 or 3 trolleys at one time, and a lot of equipment. And then you have to obviously transport it when you're on location. Is it going into a car? Is it going onto a boat? Is it going into like a canoe, like in the jungle? Is it waterproof? If something falls in, if it rains, because it'll rain out of nowhere, does it fit in the cars? Does it safely fit in the cars? Especially when you're driving, you're like, well, how can we pack it down so it's still safe for the driver, or if like passengers, if we're in the same car. There's a lot of things to think about. So yeah, going on location is amazing, but it's it's really hard. It's a lot of work.
I
Yeah.
think it's not what a lot of people would imagine.
No, I don't think it was even what I imagined. Not in a bad way. I think I was quite open to, when I started going on shoots, I was like, right, I have no idea what to expect. But, you obviously just have already thoughts and ideas of what it might be like. But yeah, it can be very
And
hard.
do you have to buy like the hammock and all these things yourself?
No,
Like, is it all personal? Okay.
No, on the shoots I did, the production supplied all of this. Because, I mean, if you have your own hammock, you want to bring it, you can. But like hammocks and like jungle boots, like special boots that will dry out faster, and the backpacks we use, stuff like that is quite specific. So the production sorted that out. So you weren't expected to like buy all of that equipment yourself. Also because it's stuff that's quite niche, like you don't necessarily use it that much. Whereas maybe like clothing, some of the stuff we would get and we would use on different shoots, and some things we'd like go get ourselves. Like I bought like a whole well, not a truckload, but I bought a lot of socks to a lot of like sports socks to bring to places like the jungle or the desert when you're out for like a month and you can kind of wash stuff. Like, to be fair, you can actually wash as long as you have like a dry bag. You can put some water in, some like soap, and like give that a good shake with your clothing. Like you can definitely wash things on location, but in the jungle where nothing ever really dries, it's really nice to have some socks, some underwear, some clothing in a few different dry bags that are like completely dry. So you can always put those on if everything else is like soaked and just not drying.
And finally, what advice would you give to young people aspiring to enter this field?
I also thought about this for a bit. I think, so I'm gonna say this, right? And I'm gonna give context to it. So like, don't cancel me. So what I would say is, no doesn't mean no. It means not right now. So hopefully you won't cut this out and just no means no. No doesn't mean no.
In the context of work.
In the context of work, then, no always means no. But when it comes to work, I would say no doesn't mean no. It means not right now. In the sense that, for example, with the wolves in Norway, I contacted them and wanted to go work with them 2 years before I actually went and did it. But they were like, no, this is not the time. This is not, I just think where I was and my experience and these things just actually didn't match up with what they needed. So they were like, no, it's not going to happen. And then 2 years later, I kind of took it back up, and then they let me come up and start working with them. So, and the same with work, you can like apply for something and they'll be like, well, actually, we don't have a role that matches your skill set now, but we'll keep your CV. And then they'll come in contact with me later and be like, oh, actually, we have something that's really relevant for what you can do now. And it's just a sense of, not taking a no as a defeat. Like, it's temporarily, like, not right now, but like maybe later, maybe in the future, or maybe something different comes up that's more right for you. I think that's something that's helped me just have that mentality of, I mean, you always ask because the worst you can get is a no, which we talked about this. That's, it's just a word. And then if they say no, you can be like, right, okay, not right now then. You'll circle back to it, come back to it later. I think that's something I've used a lot in both like kind of academic life and work life and things like this, and work-life balance. And it's helped me to not be so affected by the no's. If you just take it as like no, hard pass, never, you're like, that really sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But then maybe there's another opportunity that is more right for you.
Exactly.
Not everything fits for everyone.
Exactly. And that might be something someone else can see and you can't see at the time. Or, I mean, I don't know if I would say that like the universe gives you the right things at the right time, but I think just things sometimes just align better at a different time. And I also think that I'm a really strong believer of creating opportunities for yourself. And that's part of the whole like asking for things. Like even if you get a no, you might still have made a contact out of that connection with the person, or you might have, opened some other doors. And obviously in this industry it's tricky, like luck, I guess, is part of it. Not so much luck, but more timing. Timing is massive. And then who you kind of know, which sounds a bit networking and annoying. Not so much who you know as in like a name drop, but what I spent a lot of time doing in Bristol is I love a social event. I didn't used to, but I actually now love a social event. And I have seen how much it's given me. The fact that I've made a lot of friends in the industry just means that I have connections where people will put me forward for a job, genuinely wanting me to get it, instead of being like, oh, this name because I know this person, then they'll recommend me. It's because you actually have an interest in them and you've made like a connection with them. And it doesn't have to mean you make best friends with everyone in the industry, but just that you chat with them or you go to some social events or like screenings or whatever, and build up some sort of connection and reports with people, which is a bit more genuine than just going to, I mean, connecting on LinkedIn or like, a networking event. So I think that part of connecting with others has just shown me that people really cheer for each other and show up for each other. And even in Bristol, when it's such a small industry, such a small place, a lot of us apply for the same jobs all the time. But I've never been upset at a friend getting a job I applied for. I've just been really excited for them. And they've been excited for me when I got a job they also applied for. So I think that makes it mentally like very healthy, because you support each other even though it's hard. And it does help you, like a genuine network gets you really, really far.
That's a good answer to the question. Thank you. And thank you to the whole conversation. It was really interesting from the beginning on, from animal behavior to your work in the field. I think a lot of new things that people didn't know about. Yeah, thank you so much for having been on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.